In the heart of Amityville, Long Island, nestled amidst the mundane ebb and flow of suburban life, the Lutz family embarked on a new chapter. George and Kathy Lutz, along with their 3 children, Danny, Christopher, and Missy, were the embodiment of hope and aspiration as they moved into 112 Ocean Avenue. This wasn't just any house, it was a picturesque Dutch colonial house. A beacon of dreams, and a testament to the family's new beginning. Despite its beauty, the house harbored a dark past, a series of events so sinister that they whispered through the corridors of the town, yet the Lutzes chose optimism over fear. The house, with its eye-like windows and imposing structure, stood as a silent observer to the lives it enveloped. The Lutzes were aware of the house's history, how a tragedy had unfolded within its walls just a year before they moved in. But they were determined to build their family life, overshadowing the house's grim past with love, laughter, and the warmth of family life. As they settled in, the family adapted to their new surroundings, with George and Kathy investing themselves in making the house a home. The children explored every nook and cranny, their laughter filling the air, chasing away the silence that had lingered too long within the house. The early days were filled with the chaos of unpacking, the nights with planning for a future they were eager to unfold. But the house, with its storied history, was not a passive backdrop to their lives. Strange occurrences began to manifest, subtle at first, like a photograph misplaced or a door creaking open on its own. The family, buoyed by the novelty of their new life, paid little heed to these peculiarities, attributing them to the settling of an old house with creaky bones. However, as days turned into weeks, the anomalies grew harder to ignore. George found himself waking at 3:15 a.m. every morning, an inexplicable chill wrapping around him. A time that coincidentally mirrored the exact moment the previous year's tragedy occurred. Kathy was plagued by vivid nightmares, scenes of horror that mirrored the house's violent past, leaving her to question the boundary between dreams and reality. The children, too, felt the house's unseen presence. Missy, the youngest, spoke of a friend she named Jody, an imaginary companion who, she claimed, lived in the house. This revelation sent a shiver down Kathy's spine, as Missy described Jody with details that eerily matched the descriptions of one of the previous occupants, a victim of the tragedy. As the family's initial enthusiasm gave way to unease, they sought answers. They learned of the house's history, not just of the recent tragedy, but of the land's original use by the Shinnecock Indians as a place to house the sick and mentally ill, a ground they deemed unsuitable for habitation due to its dark energy. Determined to confront their growing fears, George and Kathy invited a priest to bless the house. But the attempt at sanctification went awry when the priest encountered a malevolent force, a voice that warned him to leave, and physical ailments that besieged him as he attempted the blessing. Despite these ominous signs, the Lutzes resolved to reclaim their home from the shadows of its past remained unshaken. They stood at a crossroads, the love for their new home and the terror of its unseen inhabitants waging a silent battle. As they prepared to confront the malevolence that lurked within, the family realized that their dream home might be a nexus of the supernatural, a portal to a past that refused to rest. The story of the Lutz family and 112 Ocean Avenue was just beginning, a narrative that would unravel the very fabric of reality, challenging their understanding of the world and testing the strength of their bond. The Amityville Horror was not just a tale of a haunted house, it was a saga of a family's confrontation with the darkest corners of the unknown. As the days stretched into weeks, the Lutz family found themselves ensnared in a web of inexplicable phenomena that seemed to defy rational explanation. What began as subtle whispers of the supernatural soon escalated into a cacophony of unsettling events that tested the very limits of their sanity. It started innocuously enough, a chill that seemed to seep through the very walls of 112 Ocean Avenue, leaving icy tendrils in its wake. George would wake in the dead of night, the air around him unnaturally cold, despite the warmth of the blankets cocooning him. At first, he dismissed it as a quirk of an old house, a draft perhaps, but as the chill persisted, creeping into every corner of the house, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled deep within his bones. Then came the whispers, faint, almost imperceptible at first, like the rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze. Kathy would hear them as she went about her daily routine, soft murmurs that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. At first, she attributed them to the settling of the house, the groans and creaks of old wood finding their voice in the silence of the night. But as the whispers grew louder, more insistent, she found herself unable to ignore the growing sense of dread that accompanied them. Odd smells began to permeate the air, a sickly sweet aroma that hung heavy in the rooms of the house. Kathy would catch whiffs of it as she passed through the hallways, a scent that seemed to cling to her clothes long after she left the room. It was a smell unlike anything she had encountered before, foul and cloying, like decay and despair woven into the very fabric of the house itself. Unexplained noises echoed through the halls of 112 Ocean Avenue, footsteps that seemed to tread where no living soul dared to venture. George would wake in the dead of night to the sound of doors slamming shut, windows rattling in their frames as if buffeted by an unseen force. And yet, when he investigated, there was no one there, no sign of intrusion or disturbance. It was as if the house itself had come alive, a living, breathing entity with a will of its own. In the darkest hours of the night, shadows danced along the walls, fleeting glimpses of figures that seemed to materialize out of thin air before dissipating into the darkness once more. Danny, the eldest of the Lutz children, would wake in a cold sweat, his heart hammering in his chest as he recounted tales of shadowy figures looming over his bed, their eyes burning with an otherworldly light. Despite their attempts to rationalize the inexplicable, the Lutz family found themselves teetering on the brink of despair. Each new occurrence pushed them further into the abyss of uncertainty, their once steadfast resolve crumbling in the face of an adversary they could neither see nor comprehend. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling around them, leaving them adrift in a sea of darkness with no shore in sight. As the days turned into nights and the nights stretched into eternity, the Lutz family clung to each other, their bond the only anchor in a storm of malevolence. But even as they sought solace in the warmth of their love, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. That something sinister lurked in the shadows, waiting to claim them as its own. The story of 112 Ocean Avenue and the Lutz family was far from over. In the darkness that enveloped them, a malevolent force stirred, its hunger insatiable, its thirst for chaos unquenchable. And as the shadows deepened and the whispers grew louder, the family realized that they were not just facing a haunted house, but a nightmare from which there might be no waking.